Tips to conduct a qualitative interview. Steps in qualitative interview. Defining objectives. The following questions are addressed by typical market research objectives. What are you hoping to discover? What intended use do you have for the outcomes? To whom do you wish to direct the interviews? At this early stage, these and other secondary goals must be clearly specified. Having a qualitative research business assist you in defining these objectives. Most likely, the business will create a proposal for you that includes suggested techniques based on your goals. Gathering a list of targets. A few distinctions to remember are as follows. Since the opt-in rate for business-to-consumer projects is usually 1:10, you will need to call at least 10+ records in order to set up one interview. You probably have an internal database list containing names, email addresses, and phone numbers if you are interviewing customers or clients for research. The process is more difficult and expensive if you wish to interview non-customers, though, as these individuals frequently have no connection to your company. Developing a recruitment screener. Pre-qualifying participants in market research has various advantages. It might be quite difficult to conduct interviews on the spot, especially for B2B, if your targets have a hectic schedule. Organizing and selecting a time in advance demonstrates your market research company's organization and consideration for the target's time. Qualitative recruiting firm has actually discovered that participants are even more ready to stay on the phone or in person with you for longer if you can make time for them. Designing an interview guide. As soon as the hiring process starts, you should start creating your moderator guide. Here's when you get tactical and translate those high-level objectives into concrete questions. Even though you already have a rough idea of your aims and objectives from step 1, a large portion of the research is conversational when conducted over the phone or in person. As a result, your script will probably contain a good number of open-ended queries. Far beyond an ordinary survey. Remember that this will lengthen the script. Aim for one question every minute, especially for the open-ended questions. Fieldwork. This is the time to call the participant directly or enter a conference line. Keep in mind that you want to spare the research participant as much labor as possible and make their life easier. It's easiest to give them a call at your designated time. The participants will probably give you the benefit of the doubt if the interview goes longer if they wind up going into great detail and discussing their open ends. Before going into greater detail, the first few questions are meant to be a warm-up or simple inquiries to let the participant feel at ease and to establish rapport. Reporting. You have a few choices when it comes to conducting the research interviews. Real-time note-taking, summarizing with notes after the interview, digital recording, and transcription are all options. In our qualitative research firm, we usually advise interviewers to take notes during the interview and to summarize the discussion afterwards. This enables us to give the participant our whole focus, listen intently, and naturally follow up with questions. Important tips to conduct qualitative interview. Tip 1. Identify when qualitative research interviews are appropriate. Numerous methodological approaches can benefit from the use of qualitative interviewing as a data collection instrument, making it appropriate for addressing a variety of research problems. However, rather than producing generalizable understandings of huge groups of people, qualitative research interviews are preferred when the researcher aims to grasp the interviewee's subjective perspective of a topic. It's also a good idea to think about the ethical implications of occupying interview subjects' time. Tip 2. Prepare yourself as an interviewer. The interviewer should not undervalue the significance of meticulous preparation, which encompasses both theoretical and hands-on practice. In order to further develop your research questions and make the process of creating an interview guide easier, you will need to do some background reading on the literature related to the topic, as well as learn about conducting qualitative interviews and the particular scientific method you are using. Tip 3. Construct an interview guide and test your questions. When you do a qualitative research interview, you could ask your subjects to consider issues that could be significant to them, in some circumstances, even concerns that could change their lives. Before starting to gather data, The inexperienced researcher develops interviewing skills by conducting practice interviews. They provide the researcher with a chance to investigate language, question clarity, and elements of active listening. One or a small number of preset questions may be included in an unstructured or semi-structured interview guide. Tip 4. Consider cultural and power dimensions of the interview situation. Before the interview, an evaluation of the power and cultural factors is required. Such an examination can take into account the opportunities presented by the interview setting as well as any roadblocks. Certain individuals might perceive the interview as challenging or intrusive, and in certain cases, a third party may need to participate in the interview as an interpreter or as someone who understands the cultural background of the interviewees. When conducting student interviews, medical educators must be mindful of power dynamics that students are not always attempting to conform to expectations. Tip 5. Build rapport with your respondents. In a qualitative interview setting, it is crucial to create a rapport and comfortable interactions beforehand, ideally well in advance of the interview. Therefore, in order to prepare your interviewees for the interview and let them know why it is vital to address the topic, you should write a brief, plain language overview of your research project and email it to them before the session. In order for the responder to give a thorough and in-depth description of the events that form the core of the study, rapport building is also essential throughout the interview. Being close to someone is essential to developing rapport. Tip 6. Remember, you are a co-creator of the data. The researcher serves as the primary data gathering tool in qualitative research. As a result, the interviewer must be self-aware, mindful, and knowledgeable of how his or her position may influence the interviewee's response. We contend that in a qualitative research interview, the interviewer and the interviewee should be seen as co-creators of the data rather than as someone contaminating or biasing the data. As a result, the interviewer uses his or her skills, experiences, and competencies to create an instrument in the interview rather than being a passive participant. Tip 7. Talk less and listen more. Interviewers who are inexperienced may participate in talks excessively because of their inexperience. Owing to anxiety in these kinds of circumstances or inexperience, the interviewee could unintentionally fill in the blanks and steer the conversation in one direction. Respecting quiet and seeing these times as opportunities for continuous introspection are essential components of actively listening to the interviewers. Respondents may find themselves reflecting deeply after participating in an interview on a topic that holds great personal significance for them. Tip 8. Allow yourself to adjust the interview guide. The interview guide can be improved during the interview process by changing the questions after the initial interviews. It's possible that some of the questions are misinterpreted, while others may be irrelevant or fall outside the purview of the study question. In one of our own research, for instance, students interpreted the question, "How do you experience the atmosphere here?" as pertaining to the physical setting and the air quality, when the interviewer's goal was to learn more about the clinic's social environment. Thus, pay close attention, take note of the interview's responses, and consider whether the interviewees are understanding your questions as you meant. Tip 9. Be prepared to handle unanticipated emotions. Research subjects pertaining to disease and mortality, as well as interviewees' personal experiences with things like stress, harassment, failure, and mental illness, are occasionally discussed in the field of medical education. The interviewer must be mindful of the interviewee's feelings when they share personal experiences on particular subjects. As an interviewer, you must intervene to safeguard the subject even though they may be able to handle these feelings on their own. Tip 10. Transcribe the interviews in good time. Data transcription gets started as soon as the data is gathered. The process of copying spoken words, such as recorded data from an interview, and putting it into written form so the data can be examined is known as transcription. Even though it is rarely defined precisely, verbatim transcription, or word-for-word transcription of verbal data, where the written words are an exact replication of the audio-recorded utterances, is the most popular type of transcription used in qualitative interviews. Tip 11. Check the data. Member checking, often referred to as respondent validation or participant validation, is a technique that can be employed to ensure the reliability of qualitative data-driven research. Our experience indicates that this procedure provides an excellent chance for inexperienced researchers to verify the accuracy of the data. It is particularly useful for picking up on nuances like irony, emotions, silences, and other gestures. On the other hand, some studies advise against member verification because there could be unintended consequences, such as divergent interpretations. Tip 12. Initiate analysis early. A primary challenge associated with qualitative research is its rapid generation of copious amounts of data, frequently amounting to hundreds of pages of transcriptions. Before conducting any interviews, you will need to consider the data analysis. The quality, richness, and depth of the conducted interviews will depend on the nature of the research topic or questions and the methodology used for the analysis. Therefore, we suggest that the material analysis be continued after all interview data has been transcribed. For more information on scholarships, internship, universities and research, please like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel, and kindly follow the links given in below description. Created by Zillion Insight.